Welcome to the ANEW Insight podcast, empowering and inspiring your journey to optimal health. Hosted by Dr. Supatra Tovar, clinical psychologist, registered dietitian, fitness expert, and author of Deprogram Diet Culture. Rethink your relationship with food, heal your mind, and live a diet-free life. And Chantal Donnelly, physical therapist and author of Settled, How to Find Calm in a Stress-Inducing World. We follow our guests' journey to optimal health, providing you with the keys to unlock your own wellness path. Tune in and evolve with us. Hello and welcome to the ANEW Insight podcast. I am Dr. Supatra Tovar.
And I am Chantal Donnelly.
We are very, very excited to have storyteller and humanitarian Shanna Forrestall with us today. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me. Excited to be here.
Yay. Well, I am going to read a little bit about Shanna and then we're going to get right into our questions for her. Shanna Forrestall is a multifaceted storyteller with over 18 years in the film, TV, and reality TV industry, crafting narratives through various mediums, including ebooks, podcasts, and documentaries. Partnering with Jeff Gold since 2020, she has produced children's bedtimes, audio stories, music, and meditations. Shanna's work spans acting, voiceover, and emceeing, and she is deeply committed to humanitarian efforts, mentoring young individuals on the autism spectrum and supporting nonprofits. Her projects address social issues, including impactful short films and documentaries. She founded the Chattanooga Fashion Expo and co-designed a charity jewelry piece, Wing Woman for Girls, Inc. Originally from South Louisiana, Shanna now divides her time between Rising Fawn, Georgia, Los Angeles, and New Orleans. Thank you so much for joining us, Shanna.
I'm excited.
Hey, Shanna. Now, not to correct Supatra, but is it New Orleans or Narlands? What do you
I knew it. I said it wrong. I know.
The city. Yeah, because a lot of people that actually from the area, we don't all say Nolans, but some people do. So it's like even within the area that we say it different. So whatever you want to say is fine.
Tomato, Chantal.
Right? Just know the food and the music is good. That's all you need to know.
Yes, it is good. I've been there. It is wonderful. Yes, indeed. Totally. I need to go back for some etouffee soon.
Right.
Mm-hmm. So now you really have a wonderful history of storytelling, and Supatra and I are really curious, was it your childhood experiences, adulthood experiences? What led you to your career in the television and film industry and this storytelling passion of yours?
Well, what's interesting is people used to always ask me when I got into acting, they were like, did you want to be an actress when you were a little girl? And I was like, no, it never crossed my mind to be an actress. However, I have been creating and telling stories and playing pretend with stories and worlds since I was a little girl. And I loved dressing up and playing. And I was always the one coming up with the story and recruiting everybody, giving them a role. Even then I was directing and producing, and then I would jump in and be part of it. But I really loved creating worlds, engaging people in that world, and then finding a story to tell together. And then, I didn't fall into the other half of my career, songwriting and children's storytelling and all of that, until 2020. But I remember distinctly when I was a little girl sitting in a closet writing poetry and writing song lyrics. And I loved doing that. I loved just sitting there and creating by myself and then, trying to share with people. And so these were things that were kind of in me, but I didn't discover them till much later in my life.
Well, tell us, I know that your history has, some hardships. It also has some triumphs. Were there any particular hardships that influenced you in, a really profound way?
Absolutely. So, I come from let's just say I'm very resilient. I've been through a lot in my life, and, people are kind of shocked sometimes when they meet me because I have high energy and I'm such a positive person and all the things, but none of that has anything to do with the life that I've lived, other than I've learned to overcome. And starting at the age of 5 with sexual assault, rolling into, all kinds of abuse in my lifetime, ranging from religious to spiritual to sexual. I've been mistreated a lot in my life. And being a young little creative and such a soft spirit, I wasn't taught boundaries. I was raised in a misogynist, Southern, hyper-religious home. I was shielded from so many things, but I wasn't shielded from trauma and danger. And I wasn't taught to build boundaries to protect myself. And so I was a victim for many years of my life, and literally until I was 36 and I was able to escape from a very toxic relationship that was getting really, really dangerous. And I said, if no one saves me, I'm going to die. I have to save myself. And so I did, and I had to save myself. And Shanna finally grew up. And when I went into therapy and got away from all the things that had contributed to me being a victim, I started to become very enamored and obsessed with my own healing, but also with how can I prevent other people from going through what I've been through, and B, if they have, help share tools that I come along to find with them. And then 3, I started to think, well, how can I create tools? Like, is there anything new that I can do to contribute to the healing process and the recovery and restoration process? And that's how I've kind of ended up where I am. My life took a real pivot when I met the man who became my second husband. He was the joy of my life, and that man refathered me. He became such a beautiful, stable asset in my life. He created a safe environment. We never argued. It was gentle, peaceful. He was my practice for boundaries. He taught me boundaries. We learned communication together, and it was the most peaceful 6 years of my life. But then all of a sudden, I lost him tragically during COVID, and he took his own life. So it was a total upheaval from someone who had been the only truly safe person I had had in my life for a long amount of time. So that again flipped my basket, and I had to really to stay alive. Honestly, I had to really look at it. Who am I? What am I doing? And why does it matter? And if I don't find a purpose right now, I'm not going to make it. And I've never been suicidal to the point of like, oh, I'm going to go and do this, but I've absolutely struggled with suicidal ideation. And when that happened, I just wanted to die. I tell people all the time, suicidal ideation for a lot of people is not, I didn't want to die. I just didn't know how to live. I didn't know how to live without the one person who had held a secure space for me. And that was just devastating, as you can imagine. So it took a whole reboot of my life. But coming out of that, what I realized was that by paying attention to my own healing process, I was able to put it into words. I've had this gift of being able to put things into words. I love words. I've always, again, from the time I was a child, practiced writing, creative writing, and also just structure. Like I was in marketing for years, and I love taking big random thoughts and curating them and bringing them down to be really precise and on paper. And I started to find that, by channeling my thoughts at that time and my healing process into stories and songs, I was able to create things that helped me, 1, survive and recover and move forward, but 2, that I hoped would help other people. And so that's how I've ended up where I am. I wrote my first song a week before I lost my husband. I wrote it for him, and I had gotten a music partner, and I sent it to him, and it became a song, and he never even got to hear it. We sang it at his memorial service. But after that, I got prolific. And the first year we released 14 songs. And then I've got albums of children's music, stories, and it's continuing. Like it just continues to grow. But that's how that seed was planted in me, and
Wow.
I tell people all the time, it's like the biggest trauma of your life usually creates who you are and activates who you are. And that's what I had to tell myself in that moment, right? Was I sat there and I went, okay, either you die, you roll over and you die right now, or you find a way to live. And I knew for me, my biggest motivator when I looked back at my own life, it was funny, I was able to play therapist for myself somehow through all of this. And I looked at my life and I went, the biggest motivator you've ever had was fighting for other people. So right now, if you start fighting for other people through your work, I think you'll save yourself. And I told myself, I said,
that is so
1
beautiful.
year, I told myself 1 year, you won't hurt yourself. You won't even think about it. You're going to put it aside for 1 year. You're not allowed to think about leaving. 1 year from now, we'll revisit. That's what I told myself. We'll revisit, and we might walk into the ocean. But I was like, 1 year, you're going to do this. And luckily, I had a great community of people that I had already built. I had learned to build lovely, precious community who held me, but I also learned how to communicate my boundaries, and I also learned how to ask for help. And those things saved me in that moment.
Oh, Shanna, that is like heart-wrenching, but also a testament to your strength and your resilience to go from such trauma as a child and then to find your safe person, but then to lose your safe person. I cannot even imagine how difficult that was for you and how much you had to delve deep within. But I am so absolutely impressed that what came out of all of that pain was this desire and this strive to help others. And I think that, having all of your experience in all of these different mediums certainly helped. But it must have really informed your storytelling on a deeper level. How does what you experienced translate into the stories that you're telling now?
Well, I think what's changed is, I've been in film for a long time and I was doing acting and I would always use my trauma in my acting, obviously. I had so much experience and then I knew how to tap into it and I learned how to tap in and tap out. And that those things always informed my work and made me, I think, real and made me empathetic to humans and their plight, right? But what changed after my husband was that I was a different person. Not only was I more balanced and healthy and resilient, but I always have tracked what is happening to me. And I think that comes from actually being an actress, because you get in class and you study and you're like, I'm learning lines, I'm staying engaged with this person, I'm allowing my own natural feelings to come out. And at the same time, you can sit on the outside and critique yourself somehow and be aware of what's going on. So you learn to split your brain, and in a good way. And I think that saved me because I would literally pay attention to my own grief. I could be in the throes of grief. Like I used to have what they call night terrors, and they would come suddenly, and often during the night when I was asleep, they'd wake me up and I'd wake up screaming uncontrollably. And I remember even sometimes in the middle of those screaming fits, trying to pay attention to my body and what was happening and going, okay, pay attention, because someone else is going to feel this and you're going to know how it feels and you're going to figure out how to get out of it. You're going to be able to help somebody else. You know what I mean? And so it's like somehow in the middle of all of it, I was aware of my own journey. And here's the thing. I think that I don't know what's out there, but I believe something bigger than us is out there. And I think we're directly involved with it. And I think that I was created for what I am doing. And that's what I came to grips with. The more I started to write, and it started to come, all the experience and the knowledge that I gathered and was gathering started to come together into pieces that I could actually be proud of. And I looked at and I went, this is my legacy. I just felt like it wasn't a mistake. I felt like I'm here and I know these things and I'm able to do this, and it can't be coincidence. It can't all be coincidence. So I just want to lean into it and get better at it. So that's been my goal for the last 4 years, is how good can I get at storytelling? How good can I get at songwriting, right? And we've improved a lot. Jeff and I have come a long way from when we started, and we're still continuing. And this new work we're about to put out, I'm more excited than anything I've ever been about in my life. I believe it is my legacy. And I think that I am using my experience. I've also spent a lot of time with humans in, my humanitarian aid efforts. I spent a lot of time with humans that have just gone through trauma. From floods and fires and all those things. I work a lot with children on the spectrum and young adults on the spectrum, and I've worked a lot with abused women. So I've sat with people in trauma, and then I also told you interview probably like, God, going on now 100 men for this project. So, because men's depression is obviously a big factor for me. So I've looked at all these things and I'm taking all this data and my personal experience, watching my own recovery and going, recovery is not as crazy as we make it. There's only so many principles. There's only so many steps. And if we can give people tools and empower them, then your job gets easier, because, people who just show up on the day and get therapy, you're going to get so much done. But if they show up ready, and if they're doing the work at home, and if they have tools to be reinforcing all the things that you're teaching them and encouraging them to do and think and say and believe, that the more we practice, the better we get. So that's my goal, is like, how can I tell stories that move people and encourage them to do the work? And then how can I create tools to help them do the work of change?
You mentioned Jeff earlier, Shanna, and I think our listeners would love to hear more. So you were talking about Jeff Gold,
yes.
in your
So
partnership?
Jeff Gold is my music and creative partner. So we met in like 2018. We met when my husband was alive, and we became good friends, and we loved Jeff. My husband used to laugh and say Jeff and I were like Muppets together, because we would just joke around and we were like two silly little puppies. And he's like, "You two are Muppets." And anyway, so when I lost my husband, Jeff was a widower as well. And when I met Jeff, he was locked in intense grief. He had, there were so many things in his life that were just frozen. And so I had an instant empathy for him. And I was like, oh, and his wife had a terrible traumatic death with brain cancer. It was spread out. It took a long time for her to pass. And it was just super traumatic on him and his family. And so when I met him, I just had such a heart for him. Who knew that like 2 years later, he was going to be the one being there for me? So we had started writing together and working on some things. And then my husband passed, and it was COVID. Like all this was happening at the same time. It was all in 2020. It was insane. So Jeff actually reached out after and said, he just called me one day, and I was trying to figure out what to do because I was giving up the home we were in. I couldn't afford it by myself. It's LA and all the things. And Jeff called me and said, Shanna, do you have somewhere to go? And I said, I don't know. I said, I don't know what to do. I don't know where to be. I can't even think. I can't eat right now, And he's like, look, I want you to come over and I want you to look at the house, because we had already been working in the house. The studio was in the house. It has a big studio in the living room. Jeff lives downstairs. His kids were all moved out and gone. He had an upstairs that was sitting there that I didn't even know was in the house. He's like, I think you should think about moving upstairs. And I'm like, what? You have an upstairs? And he's like, yeah, there's a whole suite up there. I was like, what? So I went over, and I remember my best friend took me over, and it was a few weeks after, and I still, wasn't eating, sleeping, driving. And so my friend drove me over, and I remember he said, go take a look upstairs. We're going to chat right here. And I went up there, and I walked up there, and the cat followed me. And I crawled up on the bed that was up there, no sheets or nothing, just crawled up there, and I fell asleep. I fell asleep next to the cat. And I came down like 30 minutes later, and Lizzie's like, are you okay? And I said, yes, I actually fell asleep. She's like, well, that's so good. You haven't been sleeping. And I was like, I know. And I realized that I had peace. And so I told Jeff, I said, you know what? It's COVID, and I don't need to be alone, and I don't know where I'm going. And he said, Shanna, we can get in the studio. That's the best thing we can do. We can get in the studio. We could write every day if you want to. You know what I mean? And so that's what we did. We just started making music. I hadn't sung at that point in like 20 years. We started singing. We started writing things. We started doing stories. And we just became friends, and we kind of rescued each other during that time, and the work rescued us. It's like we found our stories, and we found ways to tell them, and then we just tried to start getting better and better at what we do.
Oh, it's so beautiful. And I'm so grateful for Jeff coming in at the exact right time. And I just feel like, we're surrounded by really wonderful, loving people that, all we have to do is just reach out and to say, I'm not okay right now. And there's so many people, I don't think a lot of people realize how many people would jump to help, because there's nothing that feels better than it, and helping and, bringing fellow humans back to a healing place. Tell us more about the music, the original music and video projects under Fire and Water Music. Give us a picture of that. What's the creative process behind that?
So Fire and Water is, the first song we wrote was called, The Moon, hold on, Full Moon, my brain. It was called Full Moon. That was the first song we wrote, and that's the one I wrote with my husband. And it was basically an allegory of all these different colored moons and all the relationships I'd had before him, and then what the relationship was like with him and how different it was, and how it really helped me to find myself and realize that I was the sun. Is what the gist of that song. And it was like, your love for me helped me find me and my own power. And it was good that I wrote it, because, after that, it became kind of a mantra for me. It's like, I am the sun. Like, I loved you, and you were everything. Like, we shone on each other, and we were a team and all the things, but I am still here, and I still have power, and I can still take my life back. And so then we started writing all kinds of songs. I would study a genre, and then we'd just start writing. Jeff is an amazing musician. He has a really interesting brain, and he creates music that has been very influential and impactful in the lives of young people with autism, and we have proof of that. We have young people who've started talking after they listened to Jeff's nonverbals, who spoke after they listened to Jeff's instrumental music.
Amazing.
Like he has a very unique gift, and and it's non-traditional, like some of the things he does, and it's interesting. He had never done lyrics, so when we met and I was writing stories, he read my first children's story, which was Why the Girl Became a Cat. And he's like, I saw that you did this children's story. Do you want to do more kids stuff? I want to get into kids content. And I was like, yes. And so we had already talked about that, but then everything went down. So like as soon as I could recover, he goes, let's get back in the studio and let's start playing. So we started writing music, and then we started writing kids stories and songs. And I'm a lyricist. I love words. So, and he knows music. So we put that together and we just started writing. And like our song Next to Me is actually the first one that I actually wrote on the piano myself. I started remembering piano when I was a kid. And one day he went out and I sat down and wrote it out. That song has been already translated into 3 languages and produced like 6 different times. And I really want that song to be the voice of international suicide awareness and prevention, because it's about that. It's about what you just said. Is like, there's somebody right there who wants to help you. There's somebody right there who wants to help you and who loves you. And it's just like, we feel so alone and isolated when these things come, but there is someone right there. And this song is about asking people, it's like, hey, I'm right here. Stay next to me. Like, I'm right here. I haven't gone anywhere. And sometimes we just need to hear that. We need to remind each other of those things, right? Sometimes we don't say it enough, right? Yeah. So it's things like that have just been therapy and writing, but also they've spoken to other people, and we know that they have. We've written everything from love songs to breakup songs to songs about toxic relationships too. We write songs for kids. There's one called Penelope the Pretty Chicken that I wrote to give myself therapy when I lost my pet chicken. And it's about Penelope's a pretty chicken, and all she does is bring joy to everybody. And that's her only job in the world, is to bring joy. And it's like we do a lot of fun stuff. We went to a residency in France, and we came back right in front of French things. So we have a song about a chocolate croissant, a little girl who can't find her chocolate croissant. It's a hybrid. It's part in English and part in French to help kids learn French. We've done a lot of really fun stuff. So we're like all over the place when it comes to genre, but we write. Fire and Water music is the music that doesn't fit under the other brand. Fire and Water is, rock and blues and all the things. And then we have the other brand, which is My Calm World, which is where all the soothing, calming, healing products come from.
Great. Wow. I'm married to a musician, and I can attest to. Yeah, I mean, he and I talk all the time about the healing power of music. And I am certified in something called Safe and Sound. I don't know if you know what that is. It's part of the polyvagal theory. And they actually have taken music. When you were talking about Jeff Bloom working with autistic kids, it was created for autistic kids. And they manipulate the music and change the vibration of the music. So you're just listening to music. That's the treatment, is to just listen to music, and it actually affects the stapedius muscle in the ear, and it affects the cranial nerves, which can lead to calming the nervous system. So all that stuff is really fascinating to me.
Me too. I love it. And we're really playing now with ASMR kind of stuff, not deep, but like throwing in a lot of animal sounds. I just find, like, even with the kids stuff, we have one sing yourself to sleep, then we have one sing a sleepy time song, and that one where the kids, I'm teaching things like self-soothing using animal sounds, like pick a sound. It's you pick a sound and then you sing yourself to sleep, and then so I love the kids stuff. I really love. I don't have any children of my own, but I love thinking about, if I was a mom, and what tools would I need, or like when I was a little girl, what do I wish had been taught to me? Like, what would I have taught myself if I could have, right? Mm-hmm. And then I write songs and stories and tools for parents. We've got songs, everything ranging from like hygiene. We have a one that's coming out with a big frog, and one of my friends who's a music theater person is performing it. He's lovely, and his name is Fred Lee the Frog, and he sings about hygiene. So he has a song called Wash Your Hands, and it's reggae. And there's all these little bugs behind him. I was like, wash your hands when it's so cute. And then now we're working on a second one for him called Brush Your Teeth. Brush your teeth. And then there's a little bug brushing his teeth behind him. Like, so we're trying to make things fun, but also practical. We have one called Snyder the Sneezing Spider, which is about when you're sneezing, how to make sure you catch it in a tissue, don't get it on your friends. And it's like super cute. It's got all these little giggly animals and bugs in it. And we're doing practical things like that. But what I'm really excited about is the 2 new series I have that will be out in the next little bit. So I know I'm talking a lot, but I get so excited. The next 2 things we have coming out are a children's mental health series, and then a children's meditation series.
Oh, wonderful. We're definitely going to get into that. Definitely going to get into that. And I can attest, working with kids on the spectrum, how important music is to their emotional regulation. I would use Mozart, actually, with one of my kids to help him regulate. And, they've done tons of studies on Mozart and how it, what areas of the brain it activates and how it helps kids with so many different areas. But for him especially, it's so helpful to help him regulate. But we are out of time for this half of this podcast. So, Chantal.
Thank you all for joining us and for listening to this really fascinating conversation. Tune in for the second half of our wonderful interview with storyteller and humanitarian Shanna Forrestall.
Thanks for tuning into the ANEW Body Insight podcast. Please remember, the content shared on this podcast is for entertainment purposes only and does not constitute medical advice. You can find us anywhere podcasts are streaming, on YouTube at my.anew.insight and at anew-insight.com under the ANEW Body Insight podcast tab. Follow us on our socials at my.anew.insight on Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, and Threads for more updates. Tune in next time and evolve with us.